Do you feel emotionally connected to your plants? As if in the process of caring for them, they as well are caring for you? What about planty DIYs and thrifting for plant items? If I have your attention, then the Plants by Wade Lee podcast is for you. Join me, plant friends, as we dig deep and experience the magic of plants. Hi, everyone, and welcome to the 30th episode of the Plants by Wade Lee podcast. I'm super excited to have Soumya with us. She is with Costa Farms, and she is the social content strategist and influencer partnership program lead. That is a mouthful. But you also are a sweetheart. I had the pleasure of meeting you at PlantCon, and I'm so excited to talk to you, and not just about Costa Farms, but also about your interesting life as a creator and someone who loves social media to the point that you've made it your career. Welcome. I first want to start to get to know you a little bit more. What are 3 words that would describe you best?
Absolutely. So first, thank you for having me, Wade. I'm very excited to talk about this.
Of course.
3 words I would use to describe myself. I would say first 2 would be perceptive and introspective. So I think in just my day-to-day and as I live, I'm always evaluating the actions that I'm performing, from a mental standpoint. And then also just because I'm always inside my head in that sense, I try to be perceptive of what might be going through others' heads at all times. And I think that kind of is how I've built a foundation to sort of act on my day-to-day. And to speak to that end, I think my 3rd word I'd use to describe myself is a disruptor. So what I often find through evaluating myself and through others is sometimes the solutions to problems that we have are much more simple than we think, and it might imply that we need to do a little disrupting in our lives.
I love that because it's so true, and we are constantly thinking. And sometimes if you, like you said, just like step outside of that box and introspectively look with curiosity, you learn so much, It's super cool. I
Yeah,
love that.
You can learn so much about someone else and yourself just from looking within. As
Yeah.
cheesy as that might sound, it's very
No,
true.
but it's definitely true. Do you consider yourself an introvert or an extrovert?
This question. So I think I'm an introverted extrovert. So for me, I think I may open up more about topics or be more receptive about opening up about topics that most introverts might not. And that's just because I kind of hold the belief that we're all more similar than we think. To that end, it's about knowing the right time and place to, reveal the things that you hold close to your heart, your mind, your spirit. So I think introverted extroverts probably a safe bet for that answer.
I love that. And this is a good segue into plants because as a professional, were you a plant person before you came on to Costa Farms? Or is that, your heart and just hearing you talk in these first few moments, I'm like, yeah, you sound like a plant person. But were plants part of your life before you started working at Costa?
Part of my life, yes. Did I know anything about plants? Absolutely not. It was not a huge part of my life. As far as my connection to plants went, in my day-to-day, I always tried to be outside. I always insisted on going on runs in nature. My parents had plants growing up, but for me, I will admit that I was definitely more of a fake plant person. I didn't know anything about agriculture, and agriculture was kind of the last industry I thought I would end up in after college.
Yeah. Do you have houseplants now?
No. And allow me to elaborate. I think I'm more of a plant foster parent. So with my role at Costa, I tend to shoot content of the plants that we're always rolling out. We have plants just in our photo room and where we take the shots for our campaign. So what I end up doing is I take those plants home sometimes to shoot content with them. And when I'm done, I bring them back so I can bring another set home.
Yeah.
So because of my job, I definitely lean on that foster side.
Yeah, it's great. It's like being a grandparent, seeing the kids when you want to and just shuffling them back to the parents. That's such a beautiful thing. And being a creator, and I come from the world of like fashion, hair, photo shoots, magazine, campaign. So I hear you talk about this and I'm just like, oh my God, this is like exactly what I would love to do and see and experience live. Like the photo shoots with the plants. That has got to be so fun to orchestrate that, and the styling. I mean, there's a lot that goes to it. It's not just taking a plant and photographing it.
No, and especially when we're doing campaigns, I mean, we go full out. We'll go rent an Airbnb and we'll go shoot the plants in different rooms. Sometimes we'll have our own workers be the models for these shoots and these campaigns and these videos. So it's a really nice time for the company to kind of get together and do these fun little projects.
Before you came onto the role, was Costa Farms really working towards the education? I mean, you do a lot of education. You work a lot with other plant influencers. Was that really happening before you came on board?
So education was always a core ideal that we held. I will say the same year that I came on board, we had underwent a massive brand restructure. That was a few months before I joined. And so with that, we changed the logo. The marketing team honestly became a team. I mean, the marketing team's only 3 years old now, and my job at Costa, I've only been, maybe two years, 7 months. So it's the newest team at Costa. That being said, we also didn't have much of a social presence before I came on board. So a huge part of my job was building that social program from the ground up. And same thing with influencers. So we handled those out of house. I sort of did an audit, found that that wasn't the proper fit for where we needed to be. And so we got rid of that. And I kind of took it on myself to bring that part in house, and to the States, still primarily in house.
It's amazing. Kudos to you and the team, because Costa Farms definitely feels like a lifestyle brand now, rather than just like a plant company, and really going and preparing for us to talk to. I really kind of dug deep and was like, wow, the website's very user friendly. You get the education right off the bat if you are a new plant parent. And it's something that you can go back to refer to later too. So, and it felt, again, I'll say like a lifestyle brand. So I thought that was very, very cool.
Thank you. That feedback means the world to me. And I want to just give a quick shout out to my team, because there are so many incredible faces behind the camera. I mean, our pottery design experts, they are working day and night because they have to coordinate with the pottery design team in China. So they're on a different time schedule. So they're working all day. And then the ecom team that deals with the website and the brand team, there's so many amazing heads on this team. I'm fully convinced that we have a team of winners, and I'm glad that it's finally showing.
Yeah. Well, and then let's talk about that too, because this is a 60 plus year company owned by the same Cuban family. Would you like to elaborate just a little bit about the history of Costa Farms?
Absolutely. So we are a fourth generation led company. So the actual Costa family is still very much involved in the processes that happen at Costa to this day. So when Jose Costa essentially immigrated from Cuba to Miami, 64 years ago, we actually started as a farm growing tomatoes. And that was kind of the sole crop. Somewhere along the road, we got rid of sort of the edible crops, and we switched completely to ornamental houseplants. I just told you that the marketing team is only 3 years old. When you look at a 60-plus-year-old company, it's because we were primarily sales led. We were always catering to what the demand was in the area. The growth has been amazing just because we were very instilled in the beliefs of, the values that we held close to us. So we have this 3H culture, and it's called hungry, humble, hustle. And I think that kind of speaks for itself and how that affects our mental and how we go about processes. So we were always looking for how to expand, how to be better. And to that end, these are also qualities we should hold to ourselves in our personal lives.
Yeah, that's awesome. So one more time, hungry, humble, hustle. Hungry, humble, hustle. Yeah, that's an awesome motto to think about when you're doing your day-to-day life as well, like you said. Costa Farms is huge. You have the outdoor tropicals in Miami growing, then the exotic angel plants, including Hoyas and English Ivy, and Apopka. And that's the awesome nurseries that we toured together with PlantCon, which was so cool. The most popular houseplants sold are growing in the Dominican Republic. And then perennials, a lot of flowers. This is something that I learned doing this research. Like, that's amazing that there's a whole nother aspect of Costa that people don't probably really even know unless you're in the Northeast buying those plants. But it's Trenton, South Carolina, the Blue Ridge Mountains of Asheville, North Carolina, and then more perennials and annuals in Rapidan, Virginia.
Yes, and that's a very new one.
Yeah. Have you been to all these locations?
I have been to all of the Florida ones. I've been to the North Carolina, South Carolina. I have not been to Virginia because, as I mentioned, that one's very new. And I've not been to the DR, but I would love to tour the DR one day.
Yeah, yeah. As a plant person in the plant community, you hear it all. And this isn't necessarily on here. And if you want me to take this out, we can. But, there can be some negative talk and thoughts that Costa, is taking over the plant market. But when you really think about it, like, it is truly the American dream. You have this family growing tomatoes and then having this huge corporation that, I mean, how many people does Costa employ? Thousands and thousands, right?
Yeah, it's a
Yeah.
lot.
Yeah. And when you put that into perspective, it's like, the naysayers can say what they want, I think, and there is something to be said about home growers that, are growing these babies and selling them. But I think it's also very cool that Costa has allowed, Junie had said to me at PlantCon, plants should be accessible to everyone. And I think that's what kind of Costa allows to happen in this community. And there's something to be said about that. So, do you have any remarks on?
100%. So, and I'm very comfortable talking about this topic. It's something that I want us to talk more about. So, I think with anything that has the word corporation attached, there's going to be some stigma that comes with that. It's almost putting this image in your mind of, oh, we're fighting the little guys. But we also started as little guys ourselves. And to your point, one of the biggest things that really keeps our internal team moving is that accessibility factor. We're super passionate about the fact that we can bring these plants that were otherwise way too expensive or way too rare to people who could have never imagined affording them. And so, we get everyday DMs from people who are just thanking us for putting out these plants that they would have never thought possible to own. And one thing I've learned through my time being here is the plant community is very, very passionate. So it's not just the plant as an object. Like these plants mean so much to the people who can afford them now. And there's always this talk about we're interfering with the individual growers and the smaller plant local companies for that matter. To us, I think something that's kind of overlooked is a lot of those smaller companies will actually sell our plants because now that we're making it more accessible, we're helping them share more variety at their stores. So we've never really looked at it as us versus them. It's about how can we keep this community as a whole growing?
Yeah.
No pun intended.
No pun intended. But it's true. And there is another, as a retailer, or not just a retailer, but also as a vendor, like you said, like being a vendor to these smaller companies that want to sell these houseplants, because it's it's inevitable too that the market changes and ebbs and flows, and there, I think this is a good segue into this because like I had said earlier to you, that I came from hair background, and so I kind of retired, didn't really retire because now I'm really busting my butt in the garden, but I am the gardener at this beautiful gardens here in Jacksonville called the Cummer Museum, and they are iconic. A woman named Nina Cummer had founded the museum and literally donated all of her art and these beautiful gardens. Long story short, I was on the computer reading in the Public Garden magazine about these firefly petunias. And I was just like blown away. And in my mind, I was like, this is not going to come to market anytime soon. And this was literally like 2 months ago. Literally 2 months ago. And I sent it to my boss too, and I was just like, look at these plants. Like, this is phenomenal. And then I saw that Costa had released them with Home Depot on an online order. I have my box right here. Super, super excited about this. I was like, I almost opened it last night, and I was like, oh, you know what? It might be kind of cool to open it with. So let me
Gosh, yes,
just
let's do it.
open this up. I have a little. And you've seen this plant.
We work with Light Bio. You probably saw the company name on the box. So Light Bio is the grower. They are, I want to say they're based in Michigan. So they ship directly from Light Bio's farms. But the collaboration they have with Costa is, once again, to make it more accessible to the public. And I'm so glad that you have one now.
It's so interesting. So that's a whole nother market that I never even thought about too. That you are also like these smaller growers putting them onto such a bigger platform of sales as well. So here is the 3 petunias. These are the firefly petunias. They're already blooming. So cool. And these are little plugs. They come with 3. And so in the evening, these will glow. Do you know the science?
It's basically like a fungi that helps it glow. So think like same technology as like bioluminescence. It's natural. It's 100% natural glowing. We're not infusing the plants with anything.
Yeah. That's so interesting that that's what it is, because I have done a bioluminescence kayak in Titusville here in Florida. And it's funny because like the jellyfish were also glowing, and it was because they were eating like these amoebas that do glow, that have whatever chemical it is. That is so cool. Let me see if that.
I love anything bioluminescent. I also did the kayak here in Florida on the bioluminescent waters. It was so much fun.
Oh, you did?
I did. Yeah, that was only a few months ago.
Yeah, it was so cool. It was, y'all went very late, right? Like 12, 1 in the morning.
It
Yeah,
was it was very late and I was not prepared for the workout that my arms would undergo.
I know. I had just kayaked a few times before this on this like the Salt River on the beach by St. Augustine. Super easy kayak. And they're like, oh, we're doing this bioluminescence kayak. And I was like, oh, I kayak. I'll go with you guys. I thought I was going to die. There was one moment where I fell out of the kayak and I'm freaking out in my head. And everyone's gone. And my beautiful friend Samantha, we became good friends, like kayaked back. She's an avid kayaker. She comes back and she's like, wait, you can stand up. It's 2 feet of water. And I was like, wait, what? I'm like, oh my God, I thought I was gonna drown. It was so hilarious. And then I just got back
My
in my kayak.
goodness.
But it was super cool. The kids were like jumping and splashing, and it literally was like just glows through the air with the water. It's so cool. Okay, awesome. Let's see. Bioluminescence is best viewed at night when you can naturally adapt to the darker environment. So cool. This has all of the care instructions as well. The plant care, this is again talking about like being set up for success with Costa Farms, because you have this whole information card, which is so awesome. I'm so glad I got to open this. I'm going to plant a couple in my yard and then one, I think, in a pot in here. But I'm super excited about that.
Yes, I
Thank
would
you for
love to see
allowing
the
me to open that
updates.
up with you.
Yes.
One thing that I wanted to talk to you about was a campaign that I had heard you speak on an earlier interview, that your highest ranked holiday campaign was with a bird. How did that
So,
all happen?
I think that kind of speaks to why I love this job. I mean, I get to do fun stuff like that first of all, but so for clarity, that was our holiday campaign of 2023. The objective was to push more of our seasonal offerings, so mainly the Norfolk Island pine, along with the poinsettias, the zygos, but Our biggest holiday item has always been that pine. And so when I created the mini creator campaign, I pulled maybe 8 to 10 different creators who would be able to offer, different perceptions on how they want to add the product to their space, essentially. That being said, one thing I always wanted to move away from was partnering with just planty creators, because one thing is our motto is all thumbs are green, and we mean that. Anyone from any background, any discipline can grow plants. So, why not reach out to creators that essentially create their persona on something other than plants? So this bird, his name is Arlo. He had gone viral a few times, and his specialty was just being happy. Arlo is like one of the happiest birds I've ever seen, and his owner Jen takes really good care of him, and she just started putting out videos of him, and then it kind of blew up, and so he caught my eye, and I did know that the Norfolk Island pine is bird friendly, and so I was talking to Jen, and we kind of set it up to where Arlo could kind of exhibit some of that same joy playing around with decorating the Norfolk Island pine. I think always the most successful campaigns are going to be ones where, one, you allow the creator to do what they feel is right, because at the end of the day, they know their persona better than anyone else. So when you have these creative briefs, giving them as much wiggle room as possible to make it what they want. For Arlo, I'm going to be honest, I didn't know what to expect in the final deliverable. But when I saw this video of him, he wasn't even touching the tree. He was playing with the decorations in front of the tree. From an internal standpoint, there could be questions about, why is this going to perform? It's not even talking about the benefits of the tree or any of those hard sort of messaging points that we promote from like a paid ad standpoint, right?
Right.
But a huge part of my job, and I think my team is great at this, is just trusting the process. And so we put Arlo's content out, we put out the content of the 8 to 10 other creators, and for this campaign, every creator got an affiliate code, so we could also see how many sales were directly being attributed to each creator. And we did find out that Arlo's code had the highest number of sales, even though he didn't have the most followers or even the highest engagement rate. It was just how his content was relayed to other people. I mean, you could feel his energy through the short video of him playing with the pine.
I love that. I love that. And I have a couple of those pines from Costa that I bought on clearance at the end of season that are beautiful, and they're 4 feet now, 4 or 5 feet.
Oh my goodness!
Yeah,
Wow.
from like 2 years ago.
I was
So
about to ask how long you'd had it.
yeah,
Well,
about
they are
two
year-round
years.
plants.
But every time I water out there, I fertilize. So, but they're beautiful. They're so beautiful. I was a little worried for the frost, but they do well in the colder areas. So that's so cool. I love that story and how that's not a plant personality, so to speak, on that platform, but that also goes to speak like all thumbs are green. So it spoke to those people that are probably not planty people, but were like, oh, this is a really cool plant, a real cool tree that I could add for my holiday. I
Yeah.
love that story. That's why I wanted to ask you about Arlo. As someone who oversees plant influencers, what advice would you give to someone who is up and coming, wanting to do plant content and possibly even have collaboration with Costa?
So one thing I would say is, and I know this is something every creator has heard and is probably tired of hearing, being authentic. And at this point, it's kind of a buzzword, but the reason it's so important is the algorithm is unpredictable, right? But one thing we know about the algorithm is that it's always going to favor something that looks more genuine. That being said, thinking about what your purpose is, really digging deep, what makes you move, what makes you passionate, leaning into that passion, and then seeing how that passion, or maybe how that mindset for that matter, integrates with plants or whatever object you're trying to push as well. For someone trying to get into brand deals with Costa, I would highly recommend looking at a broader scope. So why do you want to do brand deals in the first place? And that also goes back to like why you want to be a creator in the first place. Something a little more technical I will say is, if you have a niche lean into that. I know some creators have the fear of sort of funneling out certain types of content and focusing on one piece and then losing followers because of that. But I will say that that's kind of going to be inevitable. If you want to see growth, you have to see some of that fall as well. So when you start off and you start being really broad because you're exploring the type of creator you want to be, you're attracting, groups A, B, and C, right? But when you figure out that B is the content you resonate with, it's what you're passionate about, it's what makes you tick, you want to lower content pieces A and C, and you might figure out that group C is where the bulk of your followers are from. So you have to make a tough decision. Do you lean into that or do you lean into this group B? My recommendation is leaning into that group B because it's more sustainable. It's always going to be more sustainable leaning into what you're passionate about. And for a brand, when you lean into this very particular type of content, you have to remember that anyone who's recruiting creators, we also have a creative brain as well. More often than not, that's the case. So, our brains are already taking on what could be given what you already have. So don't ever fear that because you have less forms or less angles of content that it's going to relay negatively to an influencer manager. Think of it more as you're giving them something more substantial to work with.
Yeah, that's
I can give a little bit of more context. So, say if you're part of like a POC group, or say if you're like a single mother and maybe that's your story, don't be afraid to talk about that on your platform, because also when you're putting out these very niche groups and these niche words, it definitely helps looking for creators organically or natively through the apps because we're using those keywords as well. So use as many of those keywords as you can.
great advice. I love the piece about deciding what group you're gonna choose, because like there is that thing that happens sometimes as a creator where you feel like you're working, and maybe that's because of that group A. You those are the people that like this content, but the gardening aspect of your is what really makes your heart sing. And I love that because it's so important, because sometimes you think about the numbers because you are a creator and you want to see those numbers grow. But to piggyback on that of what you said about finding your niche, and it's interesting, like I've talked a lot about how plants have really helped me through grief, but I really spoke about it very publicly and intimately with Maria on her podcast Growing Joy with Plants. And a lot of numbers came through, and people writing me personally on the DMs and just saying like, I lost someone, and I can really relate to how plants have really changed my heart and my grieving process. And so I think that's so beautifully said, because it's true to like be your authentic self and not be afraid of losing the numbers because you're being real and authentic. I think that's awesome.
One thing, and thank you for sharing that. I think one thing that definitely should be talked about if you're trying to be a creator in the planty space specifically is that this is a safe space. From the digital community standpoint, it's one of those communities where you don't have to fear as much negativity as virtually any other industry on social media. When you have those intimate conversations and you want to open up about your grief, I personally have not seen the content that you put out, but I'm willing to bet that that relayed very well to the community and they were probably supportive, and you probably got a lot of engagement on that, probably more than your other posts, because you were vulnerable and this community appreciates that vulnerability.
Yeah. You are so well spoken and just well versed in all of your ideas and how and what you brought to the table at Costa. I was going through your LinkedIn and I saw that you volunteered with TEDx. And how have those kind of opportunities brought you to the place where you do speak so well, and has given you the confidence to, especially in a Caucasian male dominated space, allowed you to, to be so authentic and real and um, own your confidence and knowing that you deserve to be in this space as well.
Absolutely. So I will take it a few steps back before TEDx. I do think everything and this goes for anyone, right? Everything we've done ever in our lives all lead up to the present moment. For me, I grew up in a small town. My family was kind of the only family of my ethnicity within this town. So from a very young age, I did have to get used to having this attention on me, whether I liked it or not, because from the physical view, I didn't look like anyone else within my town. And so from that young age, getting used to that, I will say I had a bit of an advantage because I learned how to make the best of that attention. And so even as a kid, I tried to be more active. I will say I was that one kid that wanted to be in like every club and do all of the leadership positions because again, it was about making use of that. And because I didn't identify with one group, I found myself more receptive to get along with multiple different types of groups. Fast forward to high school and college where I'm thinking about what I want to do with my life. I loved the mental part of things, thinking about going back to the introspective perceptive conversation. I loved thinking about people and their why and psychology, but I also had this creative component. So marketing seemed inevitable for me. But to your point, one of my biggest fears was that it was a male dominated space. And my biggest fear was I'm not the atypical charismatic where I can be sort of cunning in a room. And I was, to me, that was my biggest fear, was just fitting into that group. Fast forward to college, I see all these different people, including people who now look like me, right? So I feel a little bit more comfortable. TEDx wasn't a chapter at my college, so I went to NC State. We did not have a TEDx chapter. So myself and my two friends, we decided to sort of build this chapter from the ground up because we saw that because there were so many different faces and different backgrounds at our college, there were so many ideas to be shared that they just didn't have a platform to share it on. And that's kind of where the passion for TEDx came from. And so I kind of, within this founding team, built my division of marketing and analytics. And that was my first experience truly managing, multi-platform social media strategy. But then because we're building from the ground up, we're wearing a bunch of different hats. I also did like lighting for the stage. I was a speaker coach. Being a speaker coach also helped me learn maybe more about how to speak in certain situations. But I will also say building TEDx from the ground up with my friends, that definitely prepared me for the role I had at Costa to also build this social program and creator program that we have.
I love that. Well, thank you so much, my love. I will let you go so you can enjoy this beautiful Friday. But I really appreciate this conversation. It was so much fun. And that's why I love doing this because we are so much more than plants and what we do for work. And getting to hear your heart of it is so special. So I know the listeners will be so excited to tune in to hear this. I will love to have you on again. So I'll be in touch with that. But thank you so much.
Absolutely, and thank you. This is probably the best part of the job for me as well, is talking to the community and having these very meaningful conversations that need to happen. And I'm glad that you're doing this way, that you're creating this platform for not just me, but for so many other passionate minds in this community to speak on. So thank you so much for having me, and thank you for doing this.
Of course, of course. I look forward to seeing you again at the next plant event. Until
Yes,
then, my
yes, I'm
love,
very excited. All right,
bye.
thank you. Bye.
Of course, bye.